I exposed my sabotaging sister-in-law and served revenge with a cement wedding cake after she hijacked my dream kitchen and raided our renovation fund. I'm Sarah, 31, and I work as an interior designer. My husband Raphael and I bought our forever home 3 years ago, a mid-century ranch tucked into a quiet cul-de-sac where the biggest excitement is whose lawn is the greenest. The house had great bones, but inside it was stuck in the 1970s. Brown carpet, wood paneling, popcorn ceilings, the works. We decided to fix it up slowly, one room at a time, whenever we could afford it. Now, after years of patience, budgeting, and DIY weekends, we were finally down to the most important space, the kitchen. I'd been designing this kitchen in my head since the day we toured the house. I sketched out mood boards on napkins, pinned every possible backsplash on Pinterest, and even collected cabinet handles in a mason jar like they were souvenirs. My vision was clean and warm, Moroccan-style tile for the backsplash, soft under-cabinet lighting, pale quartz countertops that reflected sunlight, and custom cabinetry with deep drawers for my cast-iron pans. The budget was tight. We'd saved about $27,000 over the last year and a half, but I knew how to stretch it. Then Raphael threw a wrench into everything. He suggested we let his sister help out with the renovation. Avery is 27 and works as a general contractor's assistant. Depending on who's asking, she's either practically a licensed builder or still figuring things out. Her job history changes as often as her hair color. I've never fully trusted her, especially when she talks like she invented drywall. But Raphael was convinced she'd matured. He said she could help us cut costs and was excited to prove herself. I didn't love the idea, but Raphael and I agreed Avery would only help with demolition and maybe ordering supplies. Nothing to do with design choices. That boundary was clear. At least it was supposed to be. Avery showed up to the first workday late, blasting music from her truck and wearing a t-shirt that said, "I'm basically the boss." She brought a friend with her, some guy who barely spoke and seemed more interested in scrolling through his phone than doing any real work. Right away, she started suggesting changes. She said the custom cabinets I picked were too expensive and tried convincing Raphael we should just go with a prefab set from a chain hardware store. Her reasoning? It ships faster and leaves room in the budget for other upgrades. I said no firmly. She nodded like she understood. Then 2 days later, I got home from work and found 3 of my cabinets gone. In their place were mismatched prefab boxes, shorter, flimsier, and already dented. Avery claimed my order was delayed indefinitely, so she took initiative. I checked my email. There were no delays. She hadn't even placed the order. When I confronted her, she smirked and said, "Your budget's too ambitious, Sarah. You're designing for Pinterest, not reality." Raphael tried to smooth it over, suggesting we keep the cheaper cabinets just for now and upgrade later. That's when I started documenting everything. I saved emails, took photos, and kept every receipt. Something told me Avery wasn't just being sloppy. She was trying to take over the whole project. Then came the tile incident. I had chosen handmade Moroccan-style tiles in muted blues and greens, spending weeks sourcing them from a small supplier who works directly with artisans. When they didn't arrive on time, I checked with the supplier. They told me someone had canceled the order. I looked at the invoice history. It had Avery's email on it. Instead, she ordered mass-produced ceramic tiles in a glossy off-white. She stacked the boxes neatly in the garage like it was some kind of gift. When I asked her about it, she said she thought I'd changed my mind and that these were way more versatile. Raphael backed her up again, saying, "Maybe white was a safer choice." I didn't say anything then. I just walked into our bedroom, closed the door, and stared at my original design board. My dream kitchen was being buried under someone else's shortcuts. The final straw happened on a Friday afternoon. I got home early, hoping to get ahead on the weekend's tasks. As soon as I stepped inside, something felt off. There was a weird chemical smell, and the kitchen was half lit. I turned the corner and froze. My beautiful quartz counters, white with soft gray veining, were gone. In their place was a slab of cheap, plastic-feeling laminate that looked like faux concrete, but worse. It was warped at the edges, and one corner was chipped already. Avery was standing there, arms crossed, like she was proud of herself. She said, "It's a better fit for the vibe." The counters didn't match the backsplash. The backsplash, she changed. I didn't answer. I just picked up my phone, took pictures of every angle of the new counter, and walked out the door. I could hear Raphael calling after me, but I didn't stop. I didn't even put my shoes back on. I got in my car, drove to a friend's place, and stayed there for the night. I needed to figure out what to do next. This wasn't just a few mistakes. It felt like sabotage, and I wasn't going to let her destroy the one room I'd waited 3 years to make perfect. That night, I locked the kitchen. I took the deadbolt key off Raphael's keyring, closed the pocket doors between the kitchen and dining area, and slid the bar lock I had installed earlier that year when we hosted a big holiday dinner. Raphael stood in the hallway watching me. He asked if this was really necessary. I didn't answer. I just walked past him, went into the office, and opened the folder where I had been keeping every document related to this renovation. The next morning, I called the counter supplier myself. The person on the phone remembered the order right away. The slabs had been delivered in perfect condition, signed for by someone named Avery. I asked if there were any notes about defects or issues. There weren't. They had a copy of the pickup slip with her signature and the date it was picked up, 3 days before I came home and found laminate installed. I printed that out and added it to the folder. Then I called Raphael into the office. I didn't raise my voice. I just laid everything out: receipts, order confirmations, photos, side-by-side comparisons of what we agreed on versus what actually showed up. I pointed to the supplier invoice, then to the fake replacement Avery claimed had been necessary. He looked at it for a while without saying anything. He finally admitted that Avery told him the quartz couldn't be cut properly and had cracked during transport. He believed her and didn't want to stress me out, so he didn't mention it. I told him she signed for the slabs in perfect condition. He didn't have a response for that. I kept going. While double-checking everything Avery had purchased through our shared renovation account, I found something that didn't belong. A $5,200 charge to a company I didn't recognize. I looked it up. It was a local wedding supply vendor. The invoice description read, "Deposit for 40 by 60 tent sidewalls, optional lighting, non-refundable." It had been paid directly from our kitchen fund. I didn't tell Raphael about it right away. I needed to hear Avery's explanation first. So, I texted her and said we needed to go over next week's supply deliveries and confirm scheduling. She replied within minutes, saying she'd be over in an hour. When she arrived, she walked in like nothing had happened. She even complimented the laminate, saying it really brightened the space. I waited until she was standing in the middle of the kitchen, then pulled out the folder and spread the paperwork across the island. I asked her why she used our renovation account to place a tent deposit. She stared at the page for a second, then said it was a temporary hold she meant to repay, claiming the vendor must have mixed up her card with ours. I asked how that would even be possible when it was a direct account payment, not a credit card charge. She changed the subject, saying I was blowing things out of proportion. Raphael didn't say anything at first, then he asked her for proof that she planned to pay it back. She reached into her bag and pulled out a printed email. It was obviously fake. The formatting was off, the font didn't match the vendor's website, and there was a spelling error in the vendor's name. I cross-checked it later. The vendor confirmed no refund request had been submitted. No confusion ever happened. The deposit was marked as final. That was when the rest of it started unraveling. Avery hadn't been working at her contractor job for 2 months. She was laid off and never told anyone. She pretended she still had the job and used our renovation project as a way to look like she was still in the industry. That's why she didn't care what materials she swapped or what orders she messed with. None of it was about helping. It was all about control. I removed her access from our home security app. She couldn't unlock the side gate or enter the garage anymore. I also changed the garage code and reset the keypad to factory settings. Raphael didn't argue. He said it was time we took the project back. Avery tried calling once more. After that, I blocked her. I didn't respond or give her another explanation. Instead, I went into the office, opened a new folder on my desktop, and labeled it Wedding Cake Phase 1. Avery invited me to her cake tasting. After everything that had happened, the counters, the cabinets, the wedding tent money, I expected silence. But instead, she sent me a chipper message with a pastel pink flyer attached, cake samples, champagne, and a preview of her big day. She even included a line about hoping this could be a fresh start. I said yes. 2 days before the tasting, I called the bakery listed on the flyer. The head baker picked up and recognized my name right away. Her team had hired me 2 years ago to redesign their storefront. I told her I needed a favor, not a huge one, just one of the test cakes. I asked if it could be gluten-free with an edible fondant sculpted to mimic concrete. I said it was for a design reference. She didn't ask more and said she had just the thing. The day of the tasting, Raphael and I arrived first. He wasn't thrilled about being there, but he still wanted one last try at keeping the peace. I didn't argue. Avery walked in 10 minutes later with 2 friends I'd seen before but never spoken to. One of them was already filming the bakery interior on her phone. The cakes were set up on a table by the window, 4 flavors, each on its own little pedestal. Traditional vanilla bean, citrus silk, and a gluten-free option. All were decorated in muted wedding tones, except the last one. It had a matte slate gray exterior with a subtle marbled texture. Avery went straight for the gluten-free cake. She always calls herself sensitive to gluten when it suits her, though I've seen her demolish a breadbasket before appetizers even arrive. She cut into it confidently, all smiles, until her knife stopped halfway through. It made a loud scraping sound. Her friends leaned in. She tried again, this time with more force. The blade bent slightly and barely made it through the center. The baker stepped in right on cue, explaining that this particular cake was part of a modern texture experiment inspired by industrial design trends. She apologized if it wasn't Avery's style. One of Avery's friends spat her bite into a napkin. Avery pushed her plate away like it had offended her. The other cakes were untouched. Raphael turned to me during the chaos and whispered, "Guess she likes things hard." I didn't say anything, just sipped my champagne. Avery stood up, knocked her chair sideways, and stormed toward the door, yelling about how people keep sabotaging her wedding and how she can't trust anyone with anything. Her two friends followed, one still filming. On the drive home, Raphael stared out the window for most of the ride. Halfway back, he asked if I had something to do with the cake. I turned up the radio and tapped the steering wheel. Later that night, while going through the kitchen design files on my laptop, I noticed something strange. A new follower had saved a bunch of my recent project photos. I clicked the profile. It was a Pinterest account, private but still traceable to Avery's email. Her wedding board was filled with ideas using my original kitchen colors, the same tile palette, the same gold-accented fixtures, even the same pendant lights I picked out for our island. That was when it clicked. She didn't just hijack the renovation to save money. She wanted the design for herself. I went back through our joint renovation purchases, looking for anything that might still be active under her name. One stood out, the cake vendor she actually booked for the wedding, different from the bakery we visited during the tasting. I called them directly and told them to watch out for last-minute refund requests or fake charges, just a heads up. The next day, Raphael's cousin sent me a message, wanting to make sure I was okay. He said Avery had been going around telling everyone I threw a cement block at her during dessert. She twisted the whole story into something dramatic enough to fit whatever version she wanted people to hear. I didn't respond. I opened my laptop, renamed the wedding cake Phase 1 folder, and added 2 more tabs, venue layout plan and catering allergies master list. If Avery wanted to turn this into a performance, I was ready to give her an opening act she'd never forget. 3 days after the cake tasting incident, I got an email from Avery. It was a polished PDF attachment from what looked like some kind of invoice software with the subject line "Outstanding Payment Request." I opened it and saw a list of charges totaling $2,470. The breakdown included things like material substitutions, labor disruption recovery, and emergency design corrections due to client volatility. Each line item was vague and overpriced. One even claimed $310 for on-site conflict mediation. Raphael walked into the kitchen while I was reading it. I handed him my phone without a word. He scrolled through the invoice for 10 seconds, then laughed so hard he spilled coffee down his shirt. I didn't respond to Avery directly. Instead, I forwarded the email to Carla, a friend from design school who now works in contract law. Carla asked for everything I had: screenshots of texts, purchase receipts, before and after photos, the tent invoice, even the vendor list from Avery's wedding board. I sent her a zip folder that night. The next morning, Carla drafted a formal response. It was clear and firm, stating that the invoice was fraudulent, that there was no contractual agreement between us, and that any further attempts to pursue payment could result in legal escalation. I sent it to Avery's email and CC'd Raphael. That night, she called Raphael. She started the call in tears, loud enough that I could hear her from the next room. She told him she was being targeted, that people in her own family were emotionally abusing her. She kept repeating that she just wanted support and that Raphael needed to step in and take control of the situation before it got worse. When he hung up, Raphael sat down and said his family was starting to ask questions. Apparently, Avery had told them I was threatening her with lawyers, sabotaging her wedding, and creating a hostile environment over something as silly as a kitchen. He didn't say who exactly believed her, only that some of his cousins had texted him about it. Then he asked if I'd considered de-escalating things. I didn't raise my voice or start a fight. I just looked at him and said, "That's interesting. She just tried to charge me nearly $2,500 for wrecking my kitchen." He didn't say anything else. Later that night, I was removed from the group chat that Avery had created for wedding planning. Raphael wasn't kicked out. He left on his own. He sent a message before exiting, "We're out." That same evening, I contacted the wedding cake vendor Avery had booked, the one who was supposed to make the actual cake, not the bakery we visited during the tasting. I wanted to clarify that I wasn't involved in any financial arrangements related to the cake, just in case Avery tried something again. The woman on the phone paused for a moment, then asked if I was calling about the payment plan. I told her I had no idea what she was talking about. She explained that Avery had listed me as a CO billing party, supposedly responsible for covering 50% of the final cake cost as part of a family gift agreement. I told her that wasn't true. I had never agreed to any of it. I sent her the same folder of documents I gave Carla, screenshots, dates, proof of Avery's past misrepresentations. I asked if she needed a signed statement, but the vendor said it wasn't necessary. She thanked me for the clarity and said she would be withdrawing from the contract due to billing confusion and a pattern of miscommunication. Avery lost her wedding cake. The next morning, Raphael's phone lit up with her name again. She didn't bother texting me, she was blocked, but she left Raphael a voicemail saying she felt betrayed, that she never thought her own brother would let this happen, and ended the message by saying, "I hope you're proud. You've made yourself the villain of my wedding story." Raphael played the voicemail out loud and then deleted it. He didn't ask me to respond or try to explain what she meant. He just stood up, walked into the kitchen and started loading the dishwasher. That night, I finalized my folder. I renamed it Wedding Cake Phase 2. I had an idea I'd been working on quietly, just in case things got worse. Now, I knew exactly when to use it. Avery wanted to make me the villain. I was going to give her a story worth telling. The bakery from the original tasting didn't flinch when I made the request. I asked for a custom 3-tier cake made of hardened, gluten-free cement covered in sugar-free fondant and detailed piping. It wasn't meant to be eaten, just admired. The head baker remembered the texture experiment from the last time and laughed before saying, "You want the full version now, don't you?" I paid up front and tipped double for secrecy. To keep things smooth, I added a real vanilla sheet cake to the order. Store-bought, nothing fancy, just enough to serve guests if something went sideways. It was delivered to the venue the morning of the wedding and kept in the kitchen fridge with a label reading in case of accidental damage. 2 hours before the reception began, I had the cement cake delivered during a planned vendor shift between the florist teardown and the photo booth setup. No one paid much attention. I met the delivery team myself and helped position the cake on the display pedestal. Then I added the final touches: white gardenias, pale pink roses, edible glitter brushed along the edge, and buttercream-style piping sculpted from firm, food-safe molding paste. By the time the guests arrived, the fake cake looked like it belonged in a bridal magazine. People circled around it, complimenting the detailing and the height. One of the servers even asked who made it so he could recommend it to his cousin. Avery walked in, wearing a rhinestone-encrusted ball gown, and squealed when she saw it. She had no idea it wasn't edible. Raphael stayed by my side. When the DJ announced the cake cutting, he leaned slightly toward me. I didn't have to say anything, he already knew. I nodded toward the center of the room. Everyone gathered, cameras out. Avery and her fiancé, Derek, stood behind the cake with matching gold-plated utensils. She counted down, then pressed the knife into the bottom tier. Nothing happened. She tried again, this time using her body weight. The knife scraped, leaving a shiny mark. A dull thud echoed. Guests looked around. Someone whispered. One of her friends asked if the cake was frozen. A man near the DJ table leaned in and said, "That's not cake." A server came forward cautiously. Avery handed over the knife, confused. The staff member gently tapped the cake. Another thud. Then he lifted the top layer slightly and knocked on it. The sound was unmistakable. Stone, not sponge. The room went quiet. I took a sip of champagne and said, "Just loud enough, looks gluten-free to me." Avery screamed. She pointed to the cake box nearby, yelling the bakery's name like it was a crime scene. Her voice cracked as she accused them of sabotaging her wedding. Some guests looked concerned. Others stared in total silence. Raphael didn't move. Derek looked like he wanted to melt through the floor. He mouthed something to one of his groomsmen. What the hell is happening? Then he took a slow step back from Avery. She started crying, actual tears in a puff-sleeved ball gown beside what looked like a designer cinder block with a floral crown. A staff member tried to comfort her, but she shoved the hand away and ran toward the bathroom. While she was gone, I gave the signal to the kitchen. The venue staff brought out the real cake on a silver tray. It wasn't tall or fancy, but it was real, and it was served on time. The guests clapped politely. Plates were passed. People started laughing again. The DJ played a slow song and tried to reset the mood. Avery didn't come back out for a while. When she finally did, her makeup was smeared, and her dress was slightly damp near the hem. She avoided everyone. Her friends surrounded her like bodyguards. I didn't approach her or say anything. Raphael and I danced, drank, and chatted with the other guests like nothing happened. But when we got up to leave, I passed by her table slowly. I leaned in, smiled once, and said, "Guess you got the texture you like." She didn't respond. Her jaw clenched. I walked away before she could think of anything to say. And that was the end of her perfect cake-cutting moment. The morning after the wedding, I woke up to an email thread titled, "What Sarah Did to Me." 14 people were copied in, including Raphael's entire side of the family and 2 cousins I hadn't spoken to since our engagement party. The message was 3 paragraphs long and filled with dramatic claims. Avery accused me of sabotaging her wedding out of jealousy, said I hijacked her vendors, and even accused me of violating her dietary restrictions by using unsafe materials in a cake she had every reason to trust. 10 minutes after I finished reading, Raphael's parents responded to the thread with one sentence: "We will not be engaging in this drama." Then the screenshots started coming in. A few wedding guests sent me links to a Facebook post Avery had made the night before. The caption read, "When your wedding becomes a horror show because someone wants revenge." She uploaded 13 photos, mostly blurry shots of the cement cake, including one where her hand is mid-slice with her face twisted in confusion. She tagged the bakery, even though they hadn't been involved in the final cake. The post already had over 300 comments. Some people offered sympathy. Others posted memes about the rock cake and asked if it was a protest against gluten. Someone even edited a still of her trying to cut the cake with the caption, "She believed she could, but it was concrete." Raphael's phone lit up again that afternoon. It was the wedding photographer, who sent over a Dropbox folder containing the full video coverage, high-quality footage, clear angles, and audio that picked up everything, including the moment Avery slammed the knife and said, "Why isn't it cutting?" The video showed the exact moment the server tapped the tier, the crowd realizing it wasn't cake, and me in the background sipping champagne like I was watching a play. I saved the file. Then something unexpected happened. A guest, probably unaware of how messy things really were, tagged Avery's workplace in the Facebook post. She works at a boutique interior design firm that deals mostly with luxury remodels. The comment was casual, something like, "Even designers can have wild weddings, LOL." But it was enough. By the end of the day, Avery had edited the post's caption, claiming the cake was a surprise joke from a friend that went too far and insisting it was meant to be funny, but the timing got messed up. The tone shift was obvious. She deleted several comments, turned off tagging, and tried to walk back everything. I didn't let it slide. Using an anonymous email account, I sent the footage directly to her firm's general contact email. I explained, factually and with screenshots, that she had a pattern of lying about vendor interactions, submitting false invoices, and publicly blaming businesses for things they weren't involved in. I didn't mention the family angle. I kept it professional. 2 days later, her LinkedIn changed from design manager at Ambry Company to freelance consultant. Derek didn't post anything from the wedding, not a single picture. He untagged himself from every album Avery uploaded and quietly unfollowed her bakery account. He didn't delete his profile, but it was scrubbed clean of anything wedding-related by the end of the week. Exactly 7 days after the wedding, I opened our freezer looking for frozen peas and spotted something wedged behind a tub of ice cream. It was a Ziploc bag with a chipped piece of fondant from the sheet cake the venue served. I took it out, stared at it for a second, then tossed it in the trash. I didn't say anything. Raphael walked in and started loading the dishwasher. No one mentioned the bag. Avery hasn't reached out to me directly since the reception, but a mutual friend forwarded me an invite last night. She's planning a do-over reception in 2 months. Apparently, I'm still on the guest list. I didn't think there'd be a 6th part to any of this. After the cement cake incident, the viral Facebook drama, and Avery's sudden career shift, I figured the show was over. But she wasn't done yet. A month after the wedding disaster, an envelope arrived in our mailbox. White, with gold foil lettering, the whole thing thick with fake elegance. Inside was an invite to a mini-moon reception, a second wedding party meant to be more intimate, more refined, and apparently her redemption tour. No note, no apology, just a line that read, "Join us for a night of love and laughter." Raphael opened it and burst out laughing on the spot. I planned to ignore it, but Raphael encouraged me to go, not for her, but to hold my ground and let her see I wasn't hiding. He agreed on one condition: we arrive late, leave early, and stay close to the exits. No forced smiles, no pretending things were okay. The venue was a small outdoor garden space downtown, strung with fairy lights and lined with rented floral arches. There were mismatched centerpieces, chairs borrowed from different sets, and plastic cutlery wrapped in lace-patterned napkins. In the middle of it all, placed like a trophy, was a new 3-tier cake sitting on a marble pedestal, clearly her way of saying, "See, real cake this time." Derek looked off. He barely greeted anyone, loosened his collar halfway through the night, and spent more time at the bar than at the tables. A couple of Avery's bridesmaids stood near the punch bowl, talking about how she fired the decorator last minute. One of them said she swore no one was touching this version but her. That explained the folding chairs and clashing table runners. When Avery spotted me, she didn't even pretend to be polite. She pointed to the cake, raised her chin, and said, "Real fondant, not whatever garbage you think you're funny for." I nodded once and told her, "Hope it cuts clean." Dinner was late. The DJ was underwhelming, a power strip overloaded when the decorative lights and sound system clashed, cutting music halfway through the first dance. Staff scrambled to fix it. During the lull, a bartender quietly told Raphael that Avery had underpaid her deposit and said she'd settle the rest after tips rolled in. Then came the cake cutting again. This time, Avery made a whole show of it, announcing to the room that it was being filmed for transparency. A guest stepped forward with a phone. Avery raised the knife high, drove it into the middle tier, and the cake tilted. A soft slump followed. The top layer collapsed inward. The outer frosting slid off the side, and raspberry mousse seeped across the base like spilled jam. Avery froze. A server rushed forward. She hissed something at him, grabbed a towel, and ducked behind the venue tent. This time, I hadn't done a thing. No tricks, no bakery switch. The venue had no refrigeration, and she refused to hire a proper caterer. The frosting had melted in the heat, the filling hadn't set, and gravity handled the rest. While guests whispered and tried not to stare, Derek stepped forward. He looked around the crowd, took a deep breath, and said, "Avery, I love you, but I can't do this again. We're done." Then he set his drink down and walked out, just like that. On her second wedding night, no one moved for a few seconds. Then someone near the back clapped once. Another guest poured more champagne and muttered something about needing stronger liquor. I stood there watching, not shocked it happened, just amazed how little it took. On the ride home, neither Raphael nor I said anything for 5 straight minutes. Then he turned to me and said, "You didn't even have to bring cement this time." The next morning, Raphael told me she had texted him, one last dramatic message. She accused me of cursing the wedding and the marriage and claimed I brought bad energy that poisoned her event. I told him I didn't want to hear another word about it. He deleted the message and hasn't brought her up since. A week later, her Pinterest wedding boards were gone. Her design Instagram was locked. The honeymoon never happened. No more posts about married life or new beginnings, just silence. Meanwhile, my kitchen is finished. Every cabinet, every tile, every light switch, exactly the way I planned. Quartz counters, Moroccan backsplash, under-cabinet lighting that clicks on with a touch. No interruptions, no surprise substitutions. When we visited Raphael's parents last week, his father greeted me at the door and asked, "Still baking cakes?" Then handed me a plate of cookies and started laughing. I don't feel bad, not once. I didn't ruin Avery's wedding. I didn't destroy her cake. All I ever did was let her do what she's always done, take control, cut corners, and implode. This time, I just let the mess stay where it landed.